12 tons. That's how much counterfeit British currency the Bank of England received in a single year during World War II. 12 tons of perfect, virtually undetectable British pounds, printed not by the British government, but by Nazi Germany. And for decades, the Bank of England never told the public what had happened. But Phase 1 was just the warm-up. Kruger had a far more audacious plan, one that he called Phase 2. The idea: load Heinkel bombers with millions of fake British pounds, fly them over London, Bristol, and Manchester, open the bomb bays, and instead of explosives, drop money, not as a gift, as a weapon. The logic was coldly brilliant. Ordinary British citizens would find the notes on the streets, in their gardens, in the rubble of bombed-out cities. They'd spend them. The notes would enter circulation in enormous quantities. Banks would be flooded with suspects. The public would lose trust in their own currency. And if enough fake notes entered the system simultaneously, the Bank of England might face a run. This is the story of the most ambitious economic attack in the history of modern warfare. A plot so sophisticated it required master craftsmen, industrial printing presses, and the systematic enslavement of Europe's finest engravers. It was called Operation Bernhard, and if it had gone according to plan, you might not be watching this video in British pounds. 1942, Sachsenhausen concentration camp, 40 kilometers north of Berlin. Among the thousands of prisoners marked for death, a small group receives an unusual summons. No rough cattle car this time. No selection ramp. These 142 men are escorted, almost politely, to a sealed, guarded block known as Block 19. They are told nothing about what they are expected to do, but their files have already been read, their backgrounds already checked, because these men are not random. They are accountants, engravers, bank clerks, professional printers, some of the finest currency specialists in all of Europe. SS Major Friedrich Bernhard Kruger needs them alive. He needs them to do the one thing the entire Nazi war machine cannot do on its own: produce perfect British money. The challenge was enormous. The British pound was considered one of the most sophisticated banknotes in the world, designed specifically to be counterproof. The paper was a unique blend of linen and cotton, embedded with threads. The engravings were hand-cut with microscopic precision. The ink formulations were classified. Kruger gave the prisoners a simple instruction: match everything or be shot. And so they began. Prisoner Adolf Berger, a typesetter from Bratislava, later described the experience. They worked 14-hour days, in silence, in a sealed room, knowing that a single visible flaw meant death. Some prisoners deliberated whether to sabotage the work. If the fakes were discovered, the Nazi operation would collapse. But the SS had already thought of that. If the operation failed, so did the prisoners. They had no choice. They had to succeed. Here's what makes this story genuinely staggering. They succeeded. Within 18 months, the prisoners of Block 19 had produced banknotes so perfect that when British intelligence agents sent samples to the Bank of England for analysis, without revealing where they'd come from, the bank certified them as genuine. The Bank of England had just verified its own forgeries. Kruger reported the breakthrough to Himmler personally. The operation could now begin in earnest. The fake pounds began to flow out of Sachsenhausen through Nazi intelligence networks, through Swiss banks, through neutral couriers, through black markets across occupied Europe. Phase 1 of Operation Bernhard was already underway, and it was working. Not a military defeat, an economic one. A country can survive bombs. It cannot survive a currency it no longer trusts. Here's the number nobody talks about. By 1945, Operation Bernhard had produced a total of 134,610,945 counterfeit British currency. In today's money, that's over £6 billion. The operation was the single largest counterfeiting effort in the history of any currency, anywhere in the world. It remains unmatched to this day. And when the war ended, the British government did something remarkable. Quietly, without announcement, without explanation to the public, they redesigned the entire British pound note. New paper, new ink formulations, new design elements, all classified. When journalists asked why the design had changed so significantly, Treasury officials cited routine modernization. That was not the full story. The Bank of England knew what had happened. They knew how close it had come. They just chose never to say so publicly. As Germany collapsed in the spring of 1945, the SS faced a problem. The prisoners of Block 19 knew everything. They knew the methods. They knew the scale. They knew who had given the orders. Every intelligence doctrine said the same thing: eliminate them. But the SS never gave that order. Some historians believe Kruger thought the counterfeiters might be useful in the chaos of the collapsing Reich, perhaps to bribe their way through Allied checkpoints with the very notes they'd forged. Others believe the prisoners were simply lucky, that in the madness of the final weeks, the order was never written down, and no individual officer wanted the personal responsibility, whatever the reason. The convoy drove south, into the Austrian Alps, toward the Ebensee subcamp, then to a small mountain lake called Toplitz. And there the SS did something extraordinary. They loaded the entire operation, the presses, the plates, the paper, onto wooden rafts, and sank it. Millions upon millions of fake British pounds disappeared beneath the surface of an alpine lake. Gone. The prisoners watched from the shore. Then the SS officers drove away and left them alive. The prisoners scattered. Most survived the final days of the war, hiding in the Austrian countryside, fed by local farmers who asked no questions. Adolf Berger survived. He eventually wrote his memoir. It was later adapted into the Oscar-winning film The Counterfeiters, released in 2007. Friedrich Kruger was never tried for Operation Bernhard specifically. He was captured, escaped, recaptured, and eventually died in custody. The senior architects of the operation faced minimal legal consequences. The lake was searched. In 1959, a team of divers recovered crates containing millions in fake sterling, perfectly preserved in the cold alpine water. They did not find everything. Rumors of additional Nazi treasure caches, gold, artwork, documents, have drawn expeditions to Lake Toplitz for 7 decades. The Austrian government has repeatedly restricted access. Divers have died. The printing plates themselves have never been found, which means, somewhere, the tools to recreate the most successful counterfeiting operation in history may still exist. The war ended in 1945. Some of its questions haven't.
The history we're taught is only the surface. What lies beneath is much darker. We're just beginning to open the archives. Subscribe to Magnify History and join us as we bring the forgotten past to light.